not the norm at Liverpool. Everything normally tends to be done on kind of a piecemeal basis whenever they do recruitments. Additions here and there, one or two a season. I can't remember a time when it's been such change.
They're the Kings of England, not only the current Premier League champions, but the most successful club ever in the country. Liverpool FC won the 2024-25 title by a whopping 10 points. Despite the departures of Trent Alexander-Arnold, Darwin Núñez, and Luis Diaz, Liverpool remained determined to retain their reign atop the Premier League. Twice this summer, not once but twice, Liverpool shattered their club record transfer fee with the £116 million signing of Florian Wirtz from Bayern Leverkusen, followed by the £125 million deal for Alexander Isak from Newcastle United. Liverpool also added Eintracht Frankfurt's Hugo Ekitike for $79 million to its revamped attack. In making Isak the most expensive player in the history of British football on deadline day, Liverpool's total outlay climbed around £449 million, including performance-related add-ons. No club in the Premier League era, zero, has spent more in the transfer window ever.
Well, Michael, this isn't the first time an EPL team spent a lot of money following a championship, yet doesn't see the results the next season on the pitch. We've seen what happened with Chelsea. We also seen it with Saudi Pro League, literally spending billions of dollars to make a successful league and did not see the results on the pitch. Money helps, but it doesn't guarantee on the pitch results.
At least not immediately.
Exactly. At least not immediately. But today, we have an expert on the show who can walk us through what's going on with Liverpool and in general in the EPL with the new change of PSR rules and much more. I'm so happy to invite one of my really good friends to this show, Dave Powell, sports business journalist, and hear what he has to say about the state of things in his side of the pond.
We talk the Reds, which maybe should be called the Greens after all the money they spent. We break down Liverpool FC spending, why they're struggling on the field, and more in this episode of Finance of Football. I'm sports journalist Michael Leray.
And I am the Athletics women's soccer writer, Asla Pellet. Welcome to the show. I am so happy that I get to see my friend at least on Zoom today because I was supposed to hang out with Dave Powell, legendary sports business journalist from the other side of the pond. Welcome, Dave, to the show. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much for having me. That word legendary is doing a lot of heavy lifting. That's so much heavy lifting. We talk in the UK about how that word's cheapened over time. I think if I'm being referred to as legendary, that's a real. It's the nadir of the word's existence, I think.
A lot of people who are going to listen to this show know you from your coverage of Liverpool. And I think Michael and I have so many questions for you about this because it's been a crazy season last year for Liverpool. And then here we are. So what's up? What's going on?
Well, they were Premier League champions last season under Arne Slot in his first year in charge. And that's no mean feat to go into to a club as big as Liverpool and do that. It's very difficult. I mean, a lot of people said he won it because he had Jurgen Klopp's team, but the reality is Jurgen Klopp didn't win it with that team the previous season. So phenomenal achievement, and they didn't really spend much money last summer either. This summer they've broken the British transfer record twice. For Alexander Isak, yes.
Make it rain.
Yeah, make it rain indeed. And Florian Wirtz, they spent some £450 million on acquiring new talent. But the actual net spend was about £30 million less than what Arsenal's was, just because they were very good at player trading. I mean, they booked some high profit off the sale of academy products, so no book value, etc. And that really helped them. They did really well. But the problem is with so much churn and when you have high levels of recruitment, it's not the norm at Liverpool. Everything normally tends to be done on kind of a piecemeal basis whenever they do recruitments. Additions here and there, one or two a season. I can't remember a time when it's been such change. And it's kind of, the issue is that now everyone's like, well, this is your team on a slot, so now you are truly being judged on what you are doing. But the reality is that it takes time for a lot of new players to gel, and all the players they've signed came with really, really high expectations. So Florian Wirtz has had an unbelievable couple of seasons in the Bundesliga. Alexander Isak, there is a premium to be paid for players that can score goals in the Premier League, and Alexander Isak has done that, proven that, and that's the reason why his value more than doubled in the space of 2 or 3 years. But it just, it's hard to hit the ground running. He didn't really have much of a pre-season because of the transfer saga that existed, and he was training on his own. Wasn't really part of Newcastle's plans during pre-season. So it makes it very, very difficult. And also, it wasn't a normal pre-season for Liverpool either, because, the loss of Diogo Jota, those type of things don't just disappear once the season starts. It has been a time of much change on the field, losing some big players. Luis Diaz, Darwin Núñez goes, Trent Alexander-Arnold goes. So some big players have gone. There's been huge, huge things happening off the pitch, which would impact, anyone's mindset going into a new season. And then you also arrive into a season with a burden of expectations. So I just think these things will play out. The team will be better, but there is so many factors at play as to why they have had a mixed start to the season.
I think that's great perspective. Not only did Liverpool splash the cash, this summer, the Premier League overall did as well too, and set a completely new, transfer record. So is this kind of the dawn of a new era in this arms race and transfers? And, how are these other clubs going to compete? And we're also looking at other leagues too, La Liga, Bundesliga, Serie A. Like, how do they compete for these stars that a lot of them are obviously going for big money moves to the Premier League?
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because there was some data which came out the past couple of weeks, which kind of analysed the market trends in terms of signings in Europe. And what stood out to me was that we're actually seeing less in terms of spend on marquee players, but more in terms of spend on bulking out squads, bigger squads, and that's kind of where it lies. I mean, so if you look back at some of the signings that kind of dominate the top 10 in terms of highest transfer spend, there's still those deals for kind of Neymar, Kylian Mbappe, Ousmane Dembele. So all those type of signings are still Jack Grealish, if in terms of adjusting it for inflation, that's still higher than maybe what Alexander Isak would be right now. So there's actually been a slight pullback in terms of how much clubs are spending on big players, but they're just spending more. And the ecosystem that can sustain that level of spend is the Premier League. So the issue for me is, and the issue Premier League clubs have found is, there used to be a home for your fringe players, and that may have been the Bundesliga, Serie A, or La Liga. In reality now, AC Milan, Inter Milan, Juventus, they're not in the market to sign elite players from Premier League clubs now. So that takes away that layer of being able to move on players who are on high wages. So the rise of the Saudi Pro League has actually solved some problems for the Premier League and allowed them to create some more transfer kind of liquidity to put back into the transfer market, because Darwin Núñez managed to hold his value when he went to Al Hilal.
That was a brief period, though. That didn't last as long as we thought it was gonna last, Dave.
It didn't, no, but what they're able to do is they're able to take the fringe players and the players that may have otherwise found homes in kind of Serie A or the Bundesliga, and able to take those players and be able to pay those wages. Those kind of players would have normally, traditionally, if they weren't playing in England, have looked to play elsewhere. But I just think that the money that kind of sloshes around in the Premier League means that they are a dominant force, but everything is based on broadcast rights going up forever. I take a kind of a slightly bearish view of where the domestic right goes in the UK. So, because just for some broader context, we have the most recent domestic deal for the UK was about just shy of 6 billion for a 4-year cycle. Usually it's over 3 years, but they did it for 4 years and they gave away more games, and kind of on a per game basis, the actual value of rights there's been a diminution in the value of rights. So, and in terms of looking at the longer term trend in terms of clubs having to do more now to have less reliance on broadcast rights, so commercial income becomes more important. Match day revenue does, prize money and qualification for the Champions League,
naming rights for the stadiums,
everything. And the transfer market we're still paying big sums because everything is still on the incline in terms of those things. I just wonder what it may look like in 4 or 5 years, because I think we will reach a point where wages, even with the Premier League, just it's anti-Darwinian to think that everything goes up forever, right? So it's there has to be at a point where these things kind of stagnate and plateau. We're certainly seeing it in terms of the big deals being done. We're just seeing more players, moving around. So hence the reason why there is so much spend, but there isn't actually, if you look at the big deals being done, there isn't as many.
Here on this side of the Atlantic, we're discussing this topic constantly, right? Even Messi, who came here on the designated player rule, is saying in order for this league to reach the level of the big European leagues, everybody needs to spend more money. Like just last week, in the NWSL, the conversation about, are we going to be able to keep Trinity Rodman in this league because of the player, salary cap? In one hand, I have to say, salary cap is really actually ensuring the parity in the league, that surprising effect that makes the broadcast deal valuable in the long run. Like if the same team who can spend billions of dollars or millions of dollars on their squad and keep winning, then no one will watch the entire product. And I think that's the question that every league needs to be thinking about. And I think La Liga is thinking about this so deeply, and Bundesliga has a very I think league. And I think more and more Premier League is becoming the battle of the top six. And then a lot of games don't even get the eyeballs they deserve because people just obsessed.
Your point, Asa, about, hey, there's not parity in the Premier League anymore, but you're seeing outside investment come into the league and refueling clubs like a Newcastle that haven't been in that conversation for a decade, 2 decades, that they're now playing European soccer and they're in the conversation and they're making a ton of money off of sales per players like Isak, where they didn't originally have that outside investment. I know Wrexham you can't compare Wrexham to Chelsea or Arsenal, but they've gone up 3 consecutive leagues because of the money that's been pumped into that club. Birmingham City are going to, come out with a new stadium, Burnley and JJ. So you're having all this, it's just this huge injection of cash, especially in England. My concern is at the European level, outside of Barcelona, Real Madrid, PSG, and Bayern Munich, how do the rest of the clubs compete with the Premier League?
Dave knows this very well, American ownership at the EPL level. And I'm sure you guys are seeing difference in how these teams are managed. Can we talk a little bit about that, Dave?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's interesting you mentioned this point. So the Premier League started in 1992. Right? Before that, we had 4 divisions. Like it is now, it's a meritocracy. But the biggest clubs, as ever, wanted to have kind of a larger slice of the pie. So Premier League was formed, but that was done through huge US influence. The deal actually happened to Sky TV's deal for the Premier League was what really started and made it, razzmatazz, everything. Rupert Murdoch knew what good television should look like because he'd watched it in the US in terms of the NFL, the NBA. So he knew what a sporting kind of entertainment product should look like. So that's why they bid more money in 1992 to secure the rights, because they were very close to not getting those rights. They almost lost them to ITV. Now, other owners around that time had become enamored with how the US did sporting stadia. So David Dean, who used to own Arsenal, one of his big things in the start was toilets. So he said, if you, because in the 80s, English football was in the toilet. It was in the bin. Hooliganism was rife, high unemployment across the country. The football stadiums were not fit for purpose. They were dangerous. They were old. There was no investment made in any of them. But then a group of chairmen at the top level kind of had seen what was happening in the US. They came to New York and they'd kind of seen how American ownership treated their fans. So the point about the toilets wasn't about, people should just have clean toilets to go to, but the fact that there was, his view was you treat people like animals, expect them to behave like animals. Broken windows,
phenomenon here that we always talk about.
Absolutely. So that was the aim. So they looked at American management of their sports teams and said, really, that's how the Premier League should look. And it's not really changed since then. So I know we talk about the rush of American capital into the Premier League over the past 10 years, maybe. But in reality, the Premier League is rooted in American sports business. And so I mentioned this at a live event I did the other day. I am in the camp of, I think that American influence in English football has been a really good thing because
They're taking his passport away after this comment.
That's fine. That's
you
fine.
are not going back home.
We have a great clip there. We're going to start calling it soccer. Like, it's official. Like, Dave is speaking on behalf of everybody.
In terms of the club, these teams were very, very poorly managed. And, I'm not just talking about, the American ownership. I'm talking about the idea of treating these things like a business. But also, so my son is a wrestling fan. He's 6 years old, loves WWE. Okay, loves it. But it was around when I was a kid. And it's not really changed massively. The same thing applies. But it is sport, yes. But in reality, it's an entertainment business. It's show business. And it has a narrative and a storyline, which is every single day, 365 days a year, there is something which happens to keep people interested. It's a soap opera. The Premier League is that. So we talk about transfers. The Premier League wants it to be a really healthy transfer window because that's what fills the noise and the void during the week. The same for VAR is, as much as people might not like it, we have shows dedicated to it. It creates drama and tension and conversation in pubs and bars around the country. And people talk about things away from just what happens on a pitch. It has to be a living, breathing entertainment business for the entire year, not just for match days. So that way of thinking is kind of been born from American sport, I think, and that's kind of followed through, and that's what the Premier League is now.
I'd love your thoughts, Dave, on the perception of soccer here in the U.S. because it is that entertainment factor. We do have a little more pomp and circumstance to it outside of just the matches. MLS has grown by leaps and bounds over the last however many years. There's the global Apple deal. We have Messi. There's Thomas Muller, Son. Like, we have these big global superstars who are coming. So ahead of the World Cup, I just love your thoughts on kind of the perception of Major League Soccer and soccer in the U.S. on the other side of the pond.
It's difficult to cut through in a major way in the UK because our Premier League is so kind of prevalent everywhere. And we also have a football league which consists of the Championship, which is one of the best leagues in Europe, even including all the top, the top leagues. It's one of the best attended leagues in Europe, the Championship. But we also have a really, really healthy football system that kind of filters through. So in terms of the battle for eyeballs and interest from this side of the pond to the MLS, it's quite challenging. I think there's been maybe a heightened interest in it since Messi went there, because Messi is he's kind of between him and Ronaldo, they're kind of unicorn players, aren't they? The type that come along, almost never. The two of them came along at the same time. And then there's like Son is kind of super popular, and that's quite a good move, I think, for the MLS, so LAFC, to get Son to come over, because in the UK in particular, the younger fans tend to attach themselves to players,
not teams,
just as much as teams. So one of my friends, his son is a big Spurs fan, loved Harry Kane. Harry Kane goes to Bayern Munich, but he still loves Spurs, but he still likes Harry Kane, so he'll buy a Bayern Munich jersey because he's got Kane in the back. So, but they'll still buy a Son jersey, for LAFC, because he loves Son. I think those signings, while I don't think they are, I don't think the MLS would love to have to kind of go back to that period of have to sign it becoming kind of a retirement home for the world's best players. But there is a need for it still, in terms of to get people's interest and cut through. But it's just a real challenge. I think the view of the MLS has heightened. It's improved. So when David Beckham went over there for the Galaxy, I remember there being kind of a slew of stories about how David Beckham earns all this money, and then and the same team, there's a guy who's cleaning people's swimming pools.
I remember the same
that. Team, and that it made it it cheapened the whole thing, and it made it seem like a bit of a gimmick and a bit of a joke. But in fact, it's not. I mean, the league is a good quality. There are players who've made that transition. So you look at the likes of John Duran, who came over from from Chicago to Aston Villa, and absolutely, flew out the traps. They sold him for a huge profit. There are players that exist like that in the MLS ecosystem. It's just about kind of nurturing that talent, I think.
And it's going to be more and more because, we discussed it in our last episode. MLS just, moved their schedule to align with the European leagues. That means the new era of, I think, after 2027, when we go into transfer market, that summer, hype, we will see a lot more player moving between the leagues, I think, than ever. And what you're saying is so true. MLS can turn into a talent pool for European, leagues. And or some players to actually start coming here. And then, with more perhaps British players playing in MLS, will be more eyeballs. More people from Argentina watch MLS because Messi is here. More people from Colombia watch MLS because Colombian players here. And that's that's the, I think, name of the game. You bring somebody that everybody can identify with and then sell the whole league.
I think aligning the windows will be quite important, I think, for interest, certainly from a European perspective, because it allows the MLS to take part in that kind of parade and that ecosystem and makes them relevant when that's all going on. I think from maybe a UK perspective sometimes, because the calendars have been so different and kind of the existence of the draft previously and things like that, it made it kind of almost confusing, because unless you were a consumer of North American sports anyway, like I am, so I'm kind of au fait with the draft and collegiate sports and things like that. But if you're not, to look at the MLS from the outside looking in, it can be quite confusing setup and structure, I suppose. But in this, aligning with the European calendar allows the MLS to take part in that whole kind of game, I think is a good thing. And I also think it'll raise the quality of the league if they can be proven to be a good kind of breeding ground. I think the Premier League should be sending more players to the MLS because it's an English-speaking country.
Exactly.
It's
easy transition.
Transition is easy for younger players, certainly. And I mean, what we're finding now in Europe, and for the first time really, is more and more players are starting to move abroad. So in the 90s, it was very, very, very rare for English players to play abroad. Almost hardly ever. I can remember Paul Ince going to Inter, Gaza at Lazio, and we had the odd player, here and there, like in Russia, Juventus, but that kind of fell off. But now, Liverpool, Tyler Morton was playing at Blackburn Rovers last year. He went to Lyon this past summer. More and more players are doing that. Scott McTominay went to Napoli.
Don't remind me. Don't remind me. The guy who's Serie A Player of the Year. Did you see that bicycle kick for Scotland? Unbelievable.
The guy chose better.
I've tried that before and failed.
But he's chose better food and better weather, guys. Can you blame him?
He said he'd not eaten tomatoes before, but he said all he eats is tomatoes now, because not all tomatoes are made the same.
He meant tomato.
Clearly it's working. He's got just that aura and that swag about him on and off the pitch now ever since he's left
Vitamins.
Yeah, but I think I think we might see more and more I think once there is a stronger connection between the Premier League and the MLS, whether through sending more players there, which maybe the transfer window will help, I think that might help the thread of interest that kind of exists. Because we still have, the Serie A vies for eyeballs in the UK, and that historically in the UK, Serie A is probably more popular than La Liga. So because we had, during the 90s, a magazine show.
You had it for free, didn't you have it?
We did on Channel 4, and it was we had a show called Gazzetta Football Italia, and it was fantastic. I mean, I knew the roster list of Foggia and Cremonese and everything before I knew the squad list of anyone in the Premier League. So because it was a story. It told a story, and everyone got involved. And even now, I think you can see, AC Milan's jerseys are really, really popular still. Inter jerseys, Juventus jerseys, and we wear them kind of as fashion items now. But I think I think there's a space for. Because that's kind of the competitive element of the Serie A maybe has waned a little. So there's space more for another league to pique the interest of English fans, but I think they need something more. So that's probably going to be interest in some of their players maybe going to the MLS.
Talking about US and England, and I think maybe we just to sort of bring the topic back and then to wrap the episode up a little bit, the 2026 FIFA World Cup. It's going to happen here in, United States. We know there's a lot of chatter, particularly about ticket prices, the travel, I mean, we already talked about some of the teams that qualified, which may or may not make the overall product interesting for people to pay a lot of money for. Trump's involvement, let's not even get there. What are some of the sentiments across the pond?
I think the sentiment of certainly the UK or England rests on what they think the English national team will do. And everyone's very, very confused about what the English national team will do at the moment. Yes, they're winning games, but very unconvincingly. And there is this kind of a little disconnect, I suppose, with the national team players and the fans at the moment. But I think people said that they wouldn't get up and excited for the Qatar World Cup. They did. But I think there is more concern, I suppose, in terms of the political environment and the climate that exists in the US at the moment, because it's so, I mean, there is no, it's kind of like through the looking glass stuff sometimes, isn't it? Because it's, it's things that, would normally be confined to kind of, you'd think it was make-believe, kind of exist in an everyday occurrence in politics in the US at the moment. So it's, I think that makes people a little nervous. Usually there's a buzz far ahead. And I thought when, a couple of years back, I thought this would be the World Cup to kind of end all World Cups. It would be, the noise already would be phenomenal, but it's there's kind of the macro kind of issues are impacting it to the point where everyone's a little, like we don't know what this is going to be. Is it going to be either super great or is it just going to be okay? But it's hard to imagine that anyone would allow it to be just okay. I think it will be loud. I think it will be great, but excitement probably not building as quickly as maybe has done in the past in the UK.
Yeah, I'd say, just speaking personally here, it's the same thing, right? There's so much other stuff that's happening. It's hard to actually get excited about it. I think we'll hopefully see a kind of peak in interest on December 5th when we have the draw. And then obviously once we turn the calendar into an official World Cup year and there's just more events, activations, commercials, all that kind of stuff. Once we get through and wade through all the political nonsense and all that BS and that, that opening whistle happens, it's all eyes on the pitch. And I think it's just going to be something we've never seen before, whether it's, a sporting event in general or from a World Cup standpoint. It's just going to be untouchable in terms of ticket sales and revenue and social media engagement and all that. So good luck to Spain, Morocco, Portugal, and the South American countries in 2030 to try to top that. And I'm not just saying that as being an American.
64 teams. We're going to 64 teams.
It's a lot. It's a lot. But I also think that the World Cup will be better than the people who are have kind of a dim view of what it might be. I think it'd be far better than that. I think it'd be a great World Cup.
Well, we shall see. I still have my doubts about it. I'm going to be the sound of suspicion from this, argument. Thank you so much, Dave, for joining us. Can't wait to have you over again.
Thanks, guys. Always happy to chat and help.
Finance of Football comes to you from the Frequency Machine Podcast Network. Hit us up on social on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube for more football business and our enlightened opinions. This episode was produced by co-hosts Asa Pellet and Michael Leray. It was edited by Ryan Hammond. Mixing and mastering by Julian Kwasniewski. Our theme music is by Hatamet Tsunami. Our show is executive produced by Stacy Book and Avi Glajansky for Frequency Machine. Find more about Finance of Football at frequencymachine.com. Follow us on YouTube at Finance of Football and listen anywhere you get podcasts. Please like and subscribe. Help us reach more people. We love you for it.